Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. Today is the 10th day of September, that is 2023. Going to be reading a small book here by Walter Russell's wife. Her name was Leah, Lao. Naturally, her last name is Russell. Um, what I understand is Walter Russell was married and was not very happy with his first marriage. And somehow he met this lady, and she was I don't know how many years she was younger than him, but she was considerably younger than he was. And they just sort of clicked. I mean, they just clicked. They seemed to be in the same time zone, the same type of believing certain philosophies and that type of thing. She was a very smart woman, and so is he. And Walter Russell is another key man. He is a very, very intelligent man, had many gifts, was not what we call educated, so to speak, that is, trained in a college or any of that nature, but he was a brilliant man. And this is his other book I have here. And I have another one of his also that I have yet to, I will read this one sometime in the near future. It's called The Secret of Light. Very key book for us to understand what light is. So I'm going to be reading for this particular book. We'll see how far we get to go today. Leah was born in 1904, and she passed away in 1988. And let's see, I'll just check out and see what Walter Russell's dates are on him, because I think he died earlier than she did for sure. They lived in a particular house. I think it's well, let me make sure. Let's see, where's it at? I think it's Winchester, Virginia. I'm thinking it is, but don't hold me to that. Just trying to find out. Here it is. He was born 1871, and 1963. Was an artist, was a sculptor, was a musician. He was an architectural designer. He was a philosopher. He was a scientist, and an author known in his lifetime as the man who tapped the secrets of the universe and the man of the century. In 1921, Russell experienced a 39-day illumination period, during which time he wrote the notes that later became the knowledge and information based on his classical books, including The Universal One, which was written in 1927, The Secret of Light, 1947. In publishing his philosophical and spiritual-based science, Walter Russell was decades ahead of his time. Nikola Tesla told Russell that he should lock up his work for 1,000 years, for perhaps then the world would be ready for it. However, at the turn of the 21st century, some leading-edge scientists and some of those thinkers involved in the science and consciousness movement are taking an increasing interest in Russell's work, seamlessly interwoven science and spirituality. So he was born in 1871, and his wife was born in 1904. So you can tell there's over 30 years difference between the two. And she passed away in 1988, and he passed away in 63. So Walter Russell was basically, I think, 92 years old when he passed. He lived longer than she did. She lived to be 84 years old. So he lived to be, I think, 8 years older. Anyway, kind of got off on a tangent here, but I just want to explain who these guys are, both husband and wife team, so to speak. So this is the preface here. I'm going to be reading from this little small book. We are each given a block of marble when we begin in lifetime, and the tools with which to shape it into sculpture. We can drag it behind us untouched. We can pound it as gravel. We can shape it into glory. Glory. Examples from every other life are left for us to see. Life works, finished and unfinished, guiding and warning. Near the end, our sculpture is nearly finished, and we can smooth and polish what we started years before. We can make our greatest progress then, but to do it, we must see past the appearance of age. We generate our own environment. We get exactly what we deserve. How can we resent the life we have created for ourselves? Who's to blame? Who's to credit for us but us? Who can change it? Anytime we wish, but us. Thoughts are forces. Life builds like, and like, Like, attracts like. For one to govern his thinking, then, is to determine his life. Our thoughts and imaginations are the only real limits to our possibilities. No man's success or health will ever reach beyond his own confidence. As a rule, we erect our own barriers. So, again, this book is called Character. This is a message of divine Elidic. Hear thou me when I say that man writes his own record of his thinking and his acting in his own immortal soul, and that which man writes there will be repeated in the pattern seed of the reborning of that man into eternity. If you could see a sculpture at work upon a head, you would be fascinated with the gradual appearance of character from a characterless mass of clay. Gradually, eyes, nose, and mouth begin to shape themselves into the strong feature of a well-known statesman. It would amaze you at some stage of the work to see a tiny change in the line of the mouth, or the upturn in its corners, or just a little more clear-cut firmness given to it, a slight touch here and there in the forehead and cheeks, and especially the eyes, and the strength of the great character emerges from the shapeless clay. Perhaps you may not realize that you are also sculpturing your own features that way. You start as a baby with a perfectly characterless face and body. What you look like today is what you have sculptured the clay of your body to become. If there is firmness and strength of great character there, you have been the sculptor of it. If there is weakness and facilitation there, you also model that into your features. All men and women sculpture themselves in their own image. Perhaps you have not thought of that. Most people do not give much thought to it. Vaguely imagine that they are created to look as they do now. They think that they just grew that way. That is not right thinking. Everyone does look different because he has a different type of body. But the character and expression are different only because people think differently. Your own human nature impresses your individuality upon your whole body. From the moment you're born, your own human nature and your own character begins to impress your individuality upon your whole body. Each thought you think is just like one movement of the sculptor fingers upon his clay, which turns the corners of your mouth up or down to the beat, a cheerful person or a joyless one. Children have very little character in their faces because they have not lived long enough, you see, to have had sufficient experience in their lives to make a character. However, even at an early age, you can tell what kind of character the grown-up child will be by what he thinks and does. If I see a boy speaking hour after hour looking at a television, spending hour after hour looking at television or keeping the radio turned on all the time, I know what he will look like when he grows up. He will not be bright looking nor keen and intelligent, for he wants to be entertained all the time from sources outside of himself, where he would choose the sensational programs. Another boy, even though he does look at the television quite a bit, will choose programs which have something of a cultural value in them. If your children are inventive and have imagination, they will spend their time by making things instead of forever seeking to be amused from sources outside of themselves. Yeah, I was watching a video the other day, actually a couple of days ago. This was just done in Texas many years ago, back in the 1800s, when they had what we call two locomotives. And this was a show. This gives you an idea of what took place. This was a show, what I would call what would happen with two locomotives running into each other. And what transpired was basically first it was tried in Ohio and it failed somewhat, meaning that simply is it didn't work out. And actually, basically what I understand, the pressure was put on from others not to have it. But in Texas, it was a little different story. This is in the 1890s, I think it was. This is how people want to be entertained. This is really amazing. Um, Over 40,000 people came to see this particular event. In fact, they had to hold it off. They had to hold it off for a little while because there were still people coming on the railroad or by stage or by other ways at that time. And what transpired simply is that they were told simply is that they were asked by the engineers of the railroad company. And the name of the railroad company was Katy, Katy, which was a Kansas and Texas railroad, as well as I recollect. And what took place was simply is this was they were told that basically what would happen if the boilers exploded. And they stated from their principal engineers that no, there will not be a boiler explosion. And so people took their but actually thought, well, yeah, I guess it's okay to go to. So I don't know what they charged. I'm guessing it was like $1 to come, but they had places to eat. They had all these kind of things there. It was just amazing. And so they lined up the two trains against each other. Actually, they designed it so simply that the train would be, they had to have engineers in both of the locomotives, you see. And they had to be what I would call engineered to, eventually come colliding with one another. And they had to jump off the train. You see, the engineers had to jump while the locomotive was running to get off, you see. And what transpired was simply this. They did collide, and the boilers did explode. And I think 7 or 8 people got killed because of this, maybe more. There were more people injured quite a bit. Basically, kind of killed that idea after that spread real quick, as far as I know of. So the engineers were both wrong, or, from the engineer company such and such. And this was the whole idea of getting what I call exposure. That is a form of commercials, you see, like getting people to ride their railroad train, their passenger service train, such and such. And I don't know what happened afterwards, but basically simply is that some of the shots that were taken by the photographer was instantly killed from a bolt shot at him when it exploded. The boiler hit him and killed him instantly. And so some of the photos that we see that come from this particular guy is he was photographing the live event. But it explains why people like to be entertained. And that was in over 100 years ago, folks, over 130 years ago. It just explains where man is, you see. Let me continue on here, okay, from this book. Just thought I'd share that. If your children are inventive and have imagination, they will spend their time in making things instead of forever seeking to be amused from sources outside of themselves. I did read that. Boys or girls of 10 have strong beginnings of character, but they are only the beginnings. Your children are most pliable up to 14 years old of age. You can help them to model their own characters better before then, after that age. You hear that? It's important for you parents out there to hear. You still have time to mold your child and to encourage them to pursue deeper and things that maybe you did not do, you see, or maybe you did do. As the twig is bent, so is the tree inclined. After 14, the wood of the tree is too firm for easy bending, you see. Also, if you see boys or girls who are busy all the time doing something, making little cakes and dolls or building kites and toy planes, you know that they will be more resourceful and self-sufficient when they grow up than the boys or girls who never know what to do but to want to be taken somewhere or to be shown what to do. You hear that? You hear what she just said? Boys or girls who never know what to do but want to be taken somewhere or to be shown what to do, so they don't take the initiative. That amount of character is already modeled into their features by themselves. You must not make the mistake of judging all children alike, however. There are the dreamers who think inwardly and find a sufficiency within themselves. These are often mistaken for subnormal children when in fact they are just the opposite. The reason they may not be so active of body is because they are active in their mind. They have keen imaginations and are never so happy as when they are left alone with their own imaginations. When you see such qualities in children, you may well count upon if they that would make poor business executives but would be excellent creators in the fine arts or designing professions. But many such children suffer untold agony because not being understood by their families. Next little section is called To Look Beautiful, Have Beautiful Thoughts. Every young girl wants to look beautiful. How many thousands of times teenage girls looks in the mirror and wish they were as beautiful as some other girl they know. The way to look beautiful is to have beautiful thoughts. No one can help being beautiful if one thinks beautiful thoughts, and no one can prevent in himself or herself from looking ugly if they have ugly thoughts. Have you ever seen a sister, a mercy, or a nun who is not beautiful? No matter what her features are, she is always beautiful. Nuns lives are dedicated to giving loving service to others. Love is modeled into their every feature. They cannot help becoming the image of their own thinking. I remember when I was about 17, girls of my age dreaded growing old. They usually considered a woman of 40 as being very old. I would silently watch the women of 35 or 40 or more and think how beautiful and poised she was and think how wonderful it would be when I reached 35. I have always thought of young girls as pretty, mature women as beautiful, and old ladies as lovely. Pretty young girls have not as yet had the emotions of life to make them beautiful, for beauty is not just in form alone. Beauty is dependent entirely upon how much love a woman has put into her thinking. A woman may have a face as pretty as a doll and be repellent if she has led a selfish or cynical life. I have seen many doll-like beautiful women who have deceit and treachery written into every line in their faces. On the other hand, I have seen very plain women who were supremely beautiful because of their love they gave to the world. Love is the greatest sculpture of beauty. Florence Nightingale gave love from out of her saintly nature for many years. She was not a beautiful woman in features as the world judges beautiful women, but her countenance was luminous with a Madonna-like wish, inspired everyone who was fortunate enough to be uplifted by it. I remember a woman about 40 who was in our choir when I was a young girl. She had a prematurely white hair, which came to her suddenly because of a great sorrow. Everyone in the audience looked at her with much more interest than they did at any other young girls, for there was more of the character of beauty in her face than in the younger characterless faces, and her beautiful white hair was truly her crowning glory. Naturally, the same principle which applies to women in age and appearances also applies to men. Personally, I have always thought that the older a man grows, the more handsome he becomes. For verification of this, look over some old photographs of men you know. Even though they may have the handicap of losing all of their hair, they still look very much more handsome now than as young men with shocks of curly hair. Impressions of emotions. My husband became the world's most famous painter of children. Almost overnight, he found that he could no longer continue to paint them, for he craved to express the great beauty of older people who have lived useful, creative lives. Everyone wondered why he could possibly do such a thing as to give up painting beautiful, innocent young opening buds of life after he had so masterfully conquered the subtleties demanded by such subjects. His answer was that he tired of painting maps upon which the emotions of a lifetime were going to be impressed. They ceased to inspire him. He craved paintings faces upon with which the emotions of lifetime had been impressed, instead of the blankness of mere prettiness. He once said that there is more inspiring beauty in the face of an old, wrinkled peasant woman who has mothered 7 children under great difficulty than there is to the face of the most beautiful woman in the world who has lived for herself alone. What character is there in the calm ocean as compared with the temper-tossed waters of roaring winds and crashing waves on rock-bound shores? What opportunity for character is there in the face of the insulated office clerk as compared with the explorer of African or Brazilian jungles? We can perhaps say that the face of a gentle-bred man whose background is the drawing room of a social life is more handsome, but is it more interesting? Charm comes from giving love out of oneself to others. Often recall Barrie, Barrie, the famous English playwright, saying that a plain woman with charm is more beautiful and attractive than a beautiful woman who is without charm. Why is that? Charm comes from giving love out of oneself to others. It lies in consideration and thoughtfulness shown to others, and especially the cheerfulness of disposition which uplifts everyone with whom a person or charm comes in contact. I know of a woman who has great charm when she was with her close friends and immediate family, but she seemed to lose it completely when she was with strangers. This worried her very much, for she was always the wallflower at parties and had great difficulty with dinner parties, partners who ignored her and talked to their companions on the other side. She gradually developed a strong inferior complex because of it, even though she was very beautiful, not even yet 30 years old, and a musician of repute. One day she confided her troubles to me, and I told her that all of her troubles were the effects of one simple fault. I said, "You are afraid of people, especially men." "This is nonsense. I love to be with all people, men and women. I am not at all afraid of them," she replied. "If you're not afraid of them, why do you draw back slightly when you are introduced to any stranger?" I asked, "There is no more repelling gesture in the lexicon of how to be friends with anyone than that. You have a most chilling reserve with all strangers. I've noticed it when you were introduced to our guests. If you would just reverse that attitude and lean forward when you are greeting others who lean forward to greet you, your troubles would end that instant. Try it," I said. She did try it, and very consciously, too. Hardly a week passed before she felt a great difference in her life. She no longer had any difficulty in holding the attention of her dinner partners when she leaned towards them just a little in the natural way of friends instead of always drawing back, even ever so slightly. Very soon she had admirers and boxes of flowers. Soon she married a very prominent man. When we last heard of her, she said that the most important thing she was trying to give to her children was charm. Next section. Growing old. The greatest mistake one who's growing old can make is to dread it and try to evade it by any artificial means whatsoever beyond those which good care demands. White hair is beautiful when the time comes for white hair. To dye white hair black or red, and countless women do, is to rob themselves of the character and charm which makes old age so lovely and interesting. Instead of improving one, it has the opposite effect of making one look as artificial as the lily would be if one painted it. Probably the greatest crime in this respect is to lift one's face by a surgeon operation. All too frequently, one looks positively grotesque who has thus tried to reverse the effects of time by taking all the glory and wonder away from their face. A well-known woman in musical circles has raven black hair, which won her so many compliments that she felt her world was coming to an end when white hairs first appeared in that beautiful blackness. To delay it even a little, she dyed those few white hairs, but she could never stop dyeing them as they increased in number. It was not noticeable for years, but it became very noticeable and then conspicuously so. She could not bear to allow herself to change. However, even though she ceased to hear the compliments which gave her such pleasure in her earlier years, when she passed well into her 70s, she had an illness which kept her in the hospital for months, and still more months for convalescing. During that period, her hair became its natural snow white, and she then again received many compliments for the loveliness of her hair. She had not realized that she was working against nature, which was trying to keep her always beautiful, and she was preventing nature from doing that. Another interesting story I remember in connection with growing older is one about a woman whose sweetheart of 20 years before, who was then financially unable to marry her, wrote that he was now returning as a wealthy man. In the meantime, she had been unhappily married, and the experience had sculpted his lines on her face, and her once blonde hair was streaked with white. Her first thought upon receiving his letter was that he would be shocked when he saw her, for he would be thinking of her as she was 20 years old. She decided she must dye her hair blonde again and have her face lifted to get rid of the aging lines. He telephoned her from the station when he arrived, and the joy that they both felt told its own story. Her heart beat fast as she opened the door to let him in. There stood a fine looking middle-aged man with hair graying at the temples and with that warmth of naturalness that comes with age. He looked hard in her face and with a growing look of incredulity said, "Why, Elizabeth, you haven't changed at all." The mature romance he had returned to found had somehow disappeared, for this young-looking woman was not what he wanted now. He wanted a mature woman who could share all things with him. Life had not touched this woman, and he felt she would not be able to give her the richness of his love he sought. The lesson of the story is that as people grow old, they forget that all of their friends also grow old with them. You see, when one of them tries to look younger by artificial means, the naturalness of growth and friendship is strained. When one grows old gracefully with nature and time, nature always works with them to sculpture whatever character they have become into their bodies. We become the image of our thinking. The importance which lies back of this idea is that everyone has become the image of his own thinking. He may not have become what he wants to be because he may not have been willing to put forth the effort of becoming what he wants to be. In that case, you see other characteristics in his features. You see frustration, weaknesses, vacillation, and laziness there. You do not see in such a face the strength of a man who will go out to get what he wants with love for the very effort of it. The world is so full of people who have tremendous desires which they wish to attain by wishful thinking or by having someone else make it easy for them. Such people who desire to become great characters can become great characters by making the necessary effort. That is the only way anyone can become great. Desire alone is not sufficient. I often think of a woman who is now a well-known writer who started her career as a stenograph, but desired more than anything else to write good, fluent fictional stories for adaptation. For adaptation for movies. Every evening and way into the night, she wrote her stories. Finally, one was accepted by a leading magazine. That was her beginning, but it still meant months, perhaps years, of getting every evening to her writing. She had the strength of character necessary for achievement and eventually wrote a fine story that she sold to another leading magazine and for which she also received $50,000 for the film rights. How many people say they could write fine stories if they only had the time or the money to study? This woman had neither, but she had a dominant desire and belief in herself that nothing could quench. Only sheer hard work brought fruition to her desires. The personal director of any great industry becomes very proficient in judging the character into which people sculpture themselves. One young man, freshly graduated from school, was shown into the director's room. Instead of waiting for the first question to come from the director, he said, "I'm answering your advertisement for men. What are the hours and what do you pay?" The young man, "I'm afraid you have very much to learn in life, but we have no time to teach it to you here." The director replies he asked his secretary to show in the next applicant. A good personnel man can look over 50 applicants and eliminate two-thirds of them without taking time for interviews. Upon those whom he eliminated are the unmistakable signs of lack of initiative, laziness, and slowness of movement and speech, which also means slowness of thinking. 9 out of 10 of them are men or women who just want jobs and have no realization that their job is their opportunity for self-expression. These are the clock watchers who do as little for their money as they have to, instead of the rare few who do more than is expected of them for sheer love of work. Every man who is on the lowest rungs of the ladder in any industry has a chance as any other one to become as president. Any good reader of character can look over all of those who are on those lower rungs and pick out one here and there out of hundreds. These are the ones who always get to the top, for they always make good at every stage of their advancement. That is the way great industries find their strong men. Strength is written in them when they become come even as an office boy, and the strength of a character grows stronger year by year. One who has it always adds to it. He never subtracts from it. In every industry, just as it is in every town, there are people who are very jealous of the success of others. These are the people of lesser abilities than their co-workers or neighbors. These people develop strong cases of inferiority complexes and begin in subtle ways to underrate those who are superior to them. They cast little innuendos which are intended to belittle those of whom they are jealous. What is known as the plant gossip, or the town gossip is the fruit of such mediocre people. No more pitiful and despicable a trait exists in nature than what we call inhuman gossip. Unlike the man who attacks you with a sword from whom you have a chance to defend yourself, the gossip attacks her or his victim unseen. There's no way of protecting yourself from their viciousness. A good description of a gossip would be a human being with a serpent's tongue. That very appropriated describes one because their talking always stings. It is a strange fact that gossip gradually sculptures their features into serpent-like characteristics. Those who can read characters in face can always distinguish the inevitable habitual gossip. Gossip always gossips to court favor for themselves. Their inferiority complex compels them to tear people down to a position inferior to themselves, or to unmoral conditions of contempt in order to exalt themselves. It's not too complimentary to human nature that gossipers find many ready listeners to drink and gossip equally and repeat it with much embroidery supplied by their imaginations. It is that eager pleasure which those who listen to gossip exhibits which encourage the gossiper to return again and again with later news about their victim. See, gossip wouldn't work if you didn't have anyone to listen, you see, because people love to put others down, you see. It may be comforting for your philosopher friend to assure you that no gossip can hurt you. That is true from the long-range point of view, that is, but the immediate efforts is very often cruelly hurtful. The story of the young girl who committed suicide because a gossip who saw her return home at 2 o'clock in the morning with a married man from the next town spread that fact so far and fast that she was practically ostracized by her entire neighborhood. Her death brought out the fact that she had been to a birthday party dance given by a friend in another town, and her friend's father had driven her home. Well, what a sad situation. From a purely philosophical point of view, no gossip or slander can hurt you in theory, for truth is stronger than untruth and comes in uppermost in the long run. That may be comforting also from the long-range point of view, but gossipers can ruin one's businesses, break up homes, destroy one's peace of mind over long intervals before the untruth of the gospel can be known. In the meantime, some victims can never recover. Love alone survives. All of this brings us back to the one great fact of life, that love alone survives, and love alone is love. He who loves is love. He who gives love, to him love is to be given. He who loves is the master sculptor who creates love in his own image. Any man who would succeed in the world can succeed in the measure in which the light of love can be seen written upon his countenance and glowing in his eyes. He who has sculptured love into his face cannot fail to be loved and honored by all men, no matter what his features are like, or even though his body may be deformed. The whole world loved and honored Charles Proteus Steinmetz, the world-famous electric genius and humanitarian to whom men of Thomas Edison's stature paid deep homage. Steinmetz was a hunchback, but the sheer beauty of his character so deeply inspired anyone with whom he came into contact that his deformity was hardly noticed. He not only loved his work, but loved people. Deeply etched in his features were not only the evidence of a meteoric life which characterized the thinker, but also the love which characterizes those who love all people and all things. The greatest and most beautiful character who ever lived is the one who most loved the world. It matters not what his features were like, whether his hair was red or black, or whether he was tall or short. He would be the most beautiful face in all the world, because love and beauty are one, and both were consummated in him. When you study the face of a man like Abraham Lincoln or George Washington, you see great strength in their very beautiful faces, but it is not the strength that makes them beautiful. It is the love for humanity and the consequent beauty of thought which does it. Lincoln's features were not at all well constructed. If Lincoln had not sculptured love upon that otherwise unattractive clay, it would be very far stretched of the imagination to see beauty in it. You can see hundreds of his type without giving them a second glance. They are all of them Lincoln types in body only. Lincoln sculptured love into his clay and thus immortalized it with enduring beauty which will awaken love in all who see his likeness forever. Strength without love. Strength without love can never make a beautiful character, no matter how beautiful and how great he may be. I have in mind one of the strongest characters the world's ever known. He had the strength of a man whom you know would get anything he sets out to get, or would accomplish anything he sets out to accomplish. Such strength as that does not mean, however, that he is a beautiful character. It could indicate a sinister or ominous or selfish character whom you might fear to have dealings with, or would at least be on your guard against. When you meet that type of strong man, you cannot possibly be drawn to him as you would be to a Benjamin Franklin. The mere fact of having to live life with other people compels you to read the character of every life with whom you come in contact. Our very civilization compels this from us. For every person we come in contact with, can affect our lives to the extent we permit him to affect them, and not beyond. If you or I are not a good judge or character and permit people to enter our lives in any degree or association whatsoever, we are openly inviting that character to sculpture his thoughts upon our lives, our homes, our businesses, or our friendships. If you employ a houseworker, even though she has a kindly, honest face, but has in it a weakness without which indicates inefficiency or laziness, and your home is not as beautifully dusted as you would do it yourself, your servant is writing her environment upon yours to your detriment. Likewise, if an industrialist employs managers and foremen who are hard-driving, selfish men to run his plant, even though they may have much knowledge and efficiency, the character of that plant is what they make it, even though the character of the employer is not like theirs. You may therefore sculpture efficiency and strength and similar qualities in the image you are making of yourself, and yet not become the kind of person whom a better judge or character would employ to manifest him. You do not compliment a man by describing him as a strong man quite as much as you do when you describe him as a fine man. The connotation of love is in the description of a man as being fine, whereas the strong man description could be as well applied to a Hitler as to a Lincoln. To become a fine, strong character should be the supreme desire of every man who lives. First, however, comes the quality of love. All other qualities such as efficiency, alertness, initiative, and resourcefulness, which are built upon the basic quality of love, increase the measure of what he has sculptured into the image of himself. He may have all the outer qualities, but without love sculptured in them, he is poor indeed, and will remain so until the end of his days. Look into your mirror and study the image you have created by your thinking. Is that the image you intended to create? Are you the kind of person who want to be? The reflection you see in that mirror is the individual you have created. Out of 50 men in a department, why is it that one is selected to fill the vacancy of manager, and none of the others can ever be considered? Why is it that out of over 150 million people, it is very difficult to find 10 men whom the people of the country would feel happy and confident about becoming their president? The answer is that the men who are chosen are the men whose thoughts and actions have expressed greater desire to manifest power and love than those who are not chosen. Next section, hitch your wagon to a star. Every man determines his own destiny by what he thinks and does every moment of his life. You can become what you want to be only through your thoughts and actions. But the measure of your desire must be great in order for you to become great. Hitch your wagon to a star and fasten its bolts with deep desire to manifest love, and behold, its wings will carry you to those heights. No one who has ever reached those heights has done so by himself alone. He who loves is aware of love working with him. God is love. Love is the foundation of the universe. He who deeply loves is deeply humble. The greatest men in the world are those who are most humble. An arrogant man is one who asserts his personal ego, while a humble man is one who suppresses it and is therefore without arrogance. The quality of humility is that which gives to one the gentleness and tenderness of a spiritual strength, which can best be described as sanity. This university of love is a universe of law, for love is law. He who works with the law of love is working with the universe, and the universe is working with him. Remember always that universal love is limitless, and you are the universe. We have the power to choose our thoughts. Let me just get a little bit more here left here. Our inner peace and distress should be our primary concern, because the inner self is our true self. So in order to realize our true self, we must be willing to live without being dependent upon the opinions of others. When we are completely self-sufficient, we can have no fears of destruction. He who wisely devotes himself to being self-sufficient and therefore does not depend for his happiness upon external ratings by others is the one best able to set example for and to teach and govern others. The secrets of our success lies in building ourselves. Never mind the product, never mind the skills. They will come if we spend all our energies in building ourselves. Each of us must learn to be the fulcrum, Fulcrum, of his own power by becoming more aware of the light that comes to us gradually during the long journey from sensation to consciousness and from mediocrity to masterfulness. So that is the end of the book by Lao Russell. And some of the books that Walter Russell authored was The Secret of Light, A New Concept of the Universe, The Secret of Working Knowingly with God, The Electric Nature of the Universe, The Sculptor's Searches for Mark Twain's Immortality, The Fifth Kingdom Man, The Dawn of a New Day in Human Relations, and The Immortality of Man. And then he wrote The Message of the Divine Idiot, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And then Leah wrote books called God Will Work With You, But Not For You. Love is a scientific and living philosophy of love and sex, and Why You Cannot Die, Reincarnation Explained. And then they co-author what they call a home study course in Universal Love, Natural Science, and Living Philosophy. Scientific Answers to Human Relations. Also Atomic Suicide and the World Crisis, its explanation and solution, a vision fulfilled. So again, I just want to share that with what I call the word character. As I was impressed upon, and also in our families were sometimes in my life, all you have is your name. That's all you got. And what that meant was simply is that your name is all you have, and you can be true and honest and do the right thing, and people will not they don't have bad thoughts about you, but you can be the other way around, and you can actually have people who think very poorly of you. And so this is what Lao Russell was trying to explain to her audience. They were both gifted. I wonder, this is a speculation on my part, that they were probably what I call divine twins, or what some people call it twin flames. I don't know if I agree with all of that, what's being proponent these days, pushed by that situation of that twin flames. Usually twin flames tend to be what I call, they look a lot like each other, because they are twins. Look at a twin of brothers or sisters, and you can see that. So I just wanted to share that with you, because I do believe that character is something that is missing today immensely in our society, around us, everywhere. And the story I shared from you is something I felt was important to do with the two locomotives. Um, this it reveals a lot of what was even taking place over 120 years ago. Um, how people had already began what I would call look for sensationalism or look for something to. They saw their lives as being quote unquote dreary or unimportant, and so they would actually go hundreds of miles and pay. I don't even know if it was a dollar, but anyway, a dollar back then was a lot of money, no matter what. And plus, they paid for the tickets to get there. That is the railroad tickets, and then see something of that nature that happened and actually cause dismemberment of people, and also killing others too. So again, this is from Lao Russell. Something I wanted to read for those. Character is important, and is something that's very much missing today, immensely, especially with young people. I'm not saying all young people are bad. That's not the point. But I am saying it's missing because young people have it harder than even I do. When I was a young person, at 20 years old, or 15 or 18, such and such, I did not have the pressures that are actually 15-year-olds and 20s have today, especially the pressures of doing what the crowd is doing, no matter what that is. So again, thank you for being here. My name is again is Brant, Brant, Hunt, Hunt, and my channel is Discerning What Is True. And that is the little booklet from Lao Russell I read to you about character. Have a splendid day and take care.